pro-Palestinian agitators joined up with Antifa anarchists and traditional anti-Semites to overtake, subsume, and replace the traditional Democratic Party that everyone knew and admired. These Palestinian and fascist hijackers, they hate America. They openly chant death to America.
And now, The Edwin Black Show. Sponsored by the Books of Edwin Black, available on Amazon and at booksellers worldwide. And now, here's Edwin.
Welcome to the Edwin Black Show, come to you twice monthly from Washington, D.C. I'm Edwin Black, investigative journalist, historian, and author of 215 editions in 40 languages in 190 countries worldwide. If you like what our show's content is doing, spread the word. You can subscribe for alerts at theedwinblackshow.com. And if you want to support our work, please go to theedwinblackshow.com/support. Your help, big or small, assures our complete and utter intellectual and uncensored journalistic independence. Truth is very important these days. Today's episode is sponsored without any preconditions, requests, or stipulations by the third edition of Ken Abramowitz's unfortunately accurate book, The Multi-Front War. The volume is available worldwide, and at this point, it's needed worldwide. Today, we welcome guests from across America, including our 4 watch parties in the villages once again, Newton, Mass., Chicago, and Tampa Bay. Overseas, I see viewers logged on from Australia. I see New Zealand again, thank you. Holland, France, I see Italy, Spain, Portugal, Czech Republic, very good. I've got at least one book in Czech. Germany, Hungary, Poland, I'll be right there in about 10 days. Great Britain, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, India, and Israel, plus other countries. We have a full boat. And if you have a question limited to today's topics, place one short sentence without preamble in Zoom's QA feature. The Edwin Black Show, along with our YouTube site, is global and fast growing, enjoying many tens of thousands of views. We speak frankly and without tremor to a fragmented world, seeking better understanding of our tormented past, our present, very, very tense, and a future still uncertain. By the way, stay tuned for my special word of wisdom at the very end of the show, just before I sign off. We'll get to our always penetrating two-fisted episode, The Vintage Boys, this time the Passover edition, and this time in war mode. First, a few minutes of announcements, and then the noxious reports from the week. At the Edwin Black Show, these are the announcements. At our companion YouTube site, we have just released more compelling and hard-hitting episodes. First, we released our Yom HaGirush commemoration of 850,000 Jews openly expelled from Arab lands in the 1950s, and we wonder where the next expulsion will occur. See it and weep. Second, a dazzling and captivating episode entitled, Who Are We? And what is our universe? And what is existence? Finally, we look at the undeniable reality of devastating climate change, juxtaposed against the clear fraud of climate policy. It's a shocker you'll want to see. My appearance tour continues. Last week, I spoke at the Hillcrest Jewish Center in Queens on what it means to be a historian in our troubled times. I found a wondrous congregation, and I say this: if you are a young Jewish family in New York and want to join a welcoming, inspiring, family-style congregation, contact the Hillcrest or me. Hillcrest wants you, and you want Hillcrest. In a little more than a week, I will travel to the painful cities of Poland as the first appointed historian, scholar in residence for the International March of the Living, which will gather more than 10,000 people from many countries. First, I will lecture in Warsaw, then Krakow, then at the doorstep of death in the Auschwitz-Birkenau extermination camp, following which I shuttled to Lodz for a presentation in the shadow of the infamous Lodz ghetto. We will do the next show from Poland, live from the March of the Living. Then I fly to Israel, heading for the Gaza envelope and the still bleeding massacre sites. We'll have a live from Tel Aviv episode. Then a short hop to Athens, where I will brief Greek leaders. Find all my appearances at edwinblack.com/events and let us meet up in your city. Stand tall, I'm coming your way. I'm doing so to the best of my ability. Finally, I remind my viewers of a terrible website you must know about, publishing the ghoulish videos from October 7th. This is the war crime documentation Israel will need to prosecute after the war. See it at Hamas-massacre.net before the deniers win their war of denial. Items from the week. I remind everyone that we are now in the midst of World War J, the global war against the Jews in Gaza, at home in America, and indeed roiling through the nations of the world. Bad news streams into my office every minute of every day, and I've selected just a few of the bad ones. For every awful report, I leave out 20 or 30. First, to the Gaza war, which, as we know, is a kinetic and hot multi-front war that Israel is fighting in every direction simultaneously, regardless of Biden's humiliating and disrespectful treatment of Israel to appease the pivotal Jew-hating Democratic base in Michigan. Israel is going into Rafah, the last major bastion of Hamas's remaining half of its military. Bibi's government has already purchased 40,000 tents and will be constructing a temporary haven for the people of Gaza, that is the non-combatants, who virtually unanimously want to see every Jew murdered. We will do this for them because we do not act as those who hate us act. At the same time, just days ago, we saw a modern miracle, a Passover-style miracle. You recall that when Pharaoh sent his hundreds of charioteers, God raised a firestorm to stop them. Well, just days ago, Iran sent its modern equivalent, 300 killing drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic rockets. Israel used everything it had: F-35 Adirs, F-15 Eagles, Iron Dome, Patriot, plus David Sling, Arrow 1 and Arrow 2, land-based, sea-based, and cloud-based. I understand the Iron Beam laser was deployed, all flying in a dazzling array from low level all the way to outer space, along with international partners from Arab nations to American allies. They also took down more than 80 of the incoming killing machines. It all worked seamlessly, an untested multinational integration of modern electronics and physics that worked the first time like a firestorm in the desert, like the Red Sea parting. And yes, I've heard men of science, qualified men, declare that a virtually flawless, technical, first-time success is a modern miracle. Genesis 12:3 said, quote, "Whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you," close quote. Iran was thwarted, and half its missiles actually misfired or came down on Iranian territory, and who knows, probably killed a number of innocent Iranians. Remember, the people of Iran want Israel to succeed, to dislodge their regime of oppressive ayatollahs. America's campuses continues to be bubbling centers of anti-Semitism and Israel hatred. A congressional probe asked Columbia University President Dr. Nimat Shafiq about tenured Columbia professor Joseph Massad. He's the chair of the School of Arts and Sciences Academic Review Committee. After the October 7th massacres, Mossad extolled the Hamas slaughter as, quote, awesome, astonishing, astounding, and even, quote, incredible. This same open Jew hater previously called Israelis, quote, cruel and bloodthirsty colonizers. He also called them baby-killing Zionists. We are told that a 2005 investigation by Columbia corroborated a report that Mossad screamed at a Jewish student who questioned his views to, quote, get out of my classroom, close quote. Another professor, Dr. Mohammed Abdu, a visiting professor in modern Arab studies. Abdu was hired after the October 7th terrorist attack in Israel, even though on October 11th he posted the declaration, quote, yes, I'm with Hamas and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad, close quote. I have 24 more cases from campuses across the country, but I can tell you this, slowly the schools of hate are getting the message. Jews are fighting back with litigation every day, and indeed there is legal action every few hours of every day. Columbia has already stated that certain professors, quote, will never again work at Columbia. The university is preparing to ban students from chanting from the river to the sea right now during a sit-in on its campus. Vanderbilt has expelled 3 pro-Palestinian thugs, 1 suspended, and 27 have been placed on probation after a rowdy demonstration protesting the administration's proper removal of an inappropriate boycott, divestment, and sanctions initiative. The University of North Carolina is now canceling the goals of its diversity, equity, and inclusion staff, as school after school across America is compelled to face the hard reality that the twisted hate and anti-Semitic thrust of DEI must be purged. I see these DEI operations as modern-day Klan chapters, dressed up not in white sheets, but dressed up in linguistic wardrobes, operating in a bizarro world where inclusion means exclusion and equity means inequity. This week, Aliza Lewin of the Brandeis Center said something extraordinary and sad. She said that Jewish America is on the cusp of a civil rights movement. Goodness gracious. Is that where we are today? Mobilizing to fight Jewish exclusion, discrimination, and indeed street violence? Are we going back to my youth in Chicago where Jews could not walk on certain streets, could not get housing in certain suburbs, could not get hired by many companies such as Ford and IBM, and certain law firms could not be accepted to certain colleges such as Northwestern, accepted a quota system? I'm afraid Aliza Lewin may be correct. Jews must wake to the reality that they are now all targets. Not just them, but their synagogues, their community centers, their bagel shops, and at the front door where their mezuzah is affixed, and don't you dare take them down. The haters have made it clear they're going to come and invade us in our comfort zones. Our path ahead is something American Jewry is not prepared for. The Palestinian thugs have a strong advantage. Their numbers are small, but they have learned to scream and shout, to insult, to libel, and to slander with falsehoods. This is the tried and true, well-tested, irrepressible Arab street in action. Come to America's intersection in a globalized intifada of violence and disruption. Before it was over there in the Islamic crescent of Africa and the Middle East. Now it is Manhattan, Boston, and San Francisco. Jews don't have it in their DNA to shout, to scream, to throw loud insults, to speak slanders and lies. This is our problem, if you want to call it that. Jews want to discuss it rationally, and the other side doesn't care about reason. The Palestinian thugs, soon to be local Democratic operatives, intent on dispossessing the Jewish community. They don't need truth. They just need to scream insults and complete falsehoods. Genocide Joe, false. Genocide Ben, Genocide Jeff. They know that the uninformed Gen Zombie, that's Gen Z zombie, TikTokers are just brainless parrots waiting for a phrase to repeat. We are surviving our history, but the new generation has no need for history. They focus on today, regardless of yesterday. For Gen Z, yesterday is so far in the rearview mirror, it's out of sight and indeed out of mind. Jews, find a pencil and paper and write down this name and check him out. Zev Jabotinsky, that's with a J. Zev Jabotinsky. Sooner or later, we're going to have to trade in our petitions and position papers and press releases for the next step. That next step will be signaled by the Democratic Party and the pace with which soon, and very soon before November, it will become a Nazi party led by the pro-Palestinian agitators joined up with Antifa anarchists and traditional anti-Semites to overtake, subsume, and replace the traditional Democratic Party that everyone knew and admired. These Palestinian and fascist hijackers, they hate America. They openly chant death to America, as they did in Michigan, where, at a solidly Democratic Teamsters local hall, local Democrats such as Rashida Tlaib and even Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer refused to condemn that episode. But the Death to America chants have now become infectious among the protesters coast to coast. If you listen to their sessions as I do, if you hear the groups such as In Our Lifetime scream in frenzy that they want to eradicate all the Jews, support Iran, support Hamas and Hezbollah, and then I'm quoting, quote, burn down the American empire, period, close quote. Burn it down, burn it down, burn it down, burn it down. Many of them believe in Sharia and they want it imposed now. They openly and stupidly support Mideast regimes that persecute and even murder women because their headscarves are adjusted wrong. Homosexuals are hung from the nearest crane. There's no religious freedom and no freedom of expression. The zooming influence of these fascists in the Democratic Party is obvious and more obvious each day as they marshal and marginalize the old guard, from the party leaders such as Chuck Schumer to Nancy Pelosi herself. For example, more than 30 Democratic members of the U.S. House of Representatives have demanded a full halt to the transfer of weapons to Israel, including defensive weapons, such as those which intercepted and prevented the mass murder of thousands of Jews by Iranian missiles a few days ago. This letter was sent to President Joe Biden and Secretary of State, and as I say, it was signed by Nancy Pelosi. On Tuesday, the House passed a resolution declaring the phrase, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," as an anti-Semitic slogan. Organizers have repeatedly declared unambiguously that this means fully destroying the Jewish people in Israel. That's half the Jews in the world. In prior decades, racists in Chicago used to shout the N-word and say N out of here, N go home, whenever an African American moved into the mainly white neighborhood. Not freedom of speech is not the freedom to intimidate. It's not the freedom to harass. Well, 44 members of Congress, including LA Congresswoman Sidney Kamlager-Dove, Representative Ilhan Omar, of course, Representative Rashida Tlaib, of course, Representative Jamal Bowman, one of the worst, and Representative Cori Bush, even worse than him, voted against it. One Republican vote was also registered, I should say. Even the zealously pro-democratic organization known as the Democratic Majority for Israel condemned Cori Bush in a public statement. I want our producer, Eve, to link to that statement in our show notes. The Democrats, the establishment Democrats, are aware, the seasoned Democrats are aware that their bright blue organization is becoming one that's dark brown. Remember, the Nazi tactics are not just a similitude. They're not just a coincidence. They are a learned tactic. Hitler is a hero to the Arab and Muslim world. He was then and he is now. Mein Kampf is still a bestseller. The Arab world believes the Holocaust is either something that never happened or was justified because the Jews are evil and need to be destroyed. And before we exit the topic of the war in Gaza, I take note that more of the specifics of the sexual abuse that Hamas and civilian cousins engaged in are now coming to the fore thanks to brave, courageous women and hard physical evidence. I have painful stuff to say now, so kids and sensitive people, out of the room for a minute. You can come back in a minute. Out. Here it is. The BBC has reported it has acquired numerous photographs of women naked from the waist down or with their underwear ripped to one side, legs split apart with wounds of extreme violence at their genitals and legs. The New York Times saw a photograph of a woman's corpse with, quote, dozens of nails driven into her thighs and groin, close quote. Sorry, people. A video viewed by the same paper appears to show two women, quote, shot directly in their vaginas. Terrible stuff. Close quote. These are the people popular on the campuses of Harvard and Columbia and Georgetown. This is what agitators want to bring to America in a replay of the Summer of Love street fires and vandalism. But this time, it'll be a Kristallnacht and a Farhud combined. This is why Donald Trump, who poll after poll says that he enjoys the majority of the American voting public support for his policies and candidacy, he says any Jew would be out of his head to vote for a Democrat. And that covers any Democrat, especially local Democrats, where this fascist virus festers most. Trump is portrayed as an anti-Semite for that remark. So now, in a lightning round, a simple ask, a simple yes or no, I ask my panelists, quote, here's the question, guys. Is any Jew out of his head to vote for a Democrat, as Trump said? Let me hear first from Shelley.
They're extremely, extremely misguided.
Okay, let me hear next from Ken. Are they out of their head or what?
You're being kind. The Democratic Party is now systemically anti-Semitic. And by the way, systemically anti-Christian. So I would argue that neither Jews nor Christians should be voting for a Democrat.
All right, let's hear from Zalmi in London. Are the Jews out of their head for voting for Democrats? What do you say?
Unfortunately, we're looking at the left becoming increasingly radicalized, and the people on the left who campaigned that they're feminists have said nothing about the rape of our women and the things that you've described, and they've said they've become basically fellow travelers with Islamists, and I think this comes from the emptiness in their heads filled by TikTok and a complete lack of any purpose in life, especially amongst the young. In England, there is a huge amount of conversions in schools to Islam. Ordinary British kids are being proselytized to wear hijabs. This is what's happening.
All right, let's hear from the other side. Jeff, Trump says, without approving of Trump, right or wrong, Trump says that a Jew is out of his head to vote for any Democrat. What do you say out there in San Francisco?
First of all, nobody answered yes or no. Nobody. And so I'm not going to either. Okay. It's not so simple, guys. And you all know this. I don't disagree with anything that Ed has said or anything you have said about the whack job Democrats who are threatening our people. So all I can say is I would never vote for Donald Trump. And, I'm not so happy with the Democratic Party either, but I'd vote for them over a whack job like Trump.
All right, I just want to say that today President Biden made it clear, crystal clear, that the IDF must not go into Haifa. That's Haifa. It turns out that Haifa and Rafah are different places. You want to go to Haifa, you take the high-speed train and you have a cup of coffee. If you want to go into Rafah, you need a tank.
This is the guy with the nuclear codes.
This is the guy with the nuclear codes.
The Israeli government gave Biden an ironclad commitment that they would not go in and attack Haifa.
No, and I think they should not attack Haifa because, I mean, Haifa has some tremendous falafel and shawarma stands, and you know that, Zalmi, is that you don't deny that, do you?
Not at all. Not at all.
I would just like to remind us that we are on the same side.
Okay. For now, I want to admit that I left out, and it's getting worse, ladies and gentlemen, 99% of everything, and I took a long time doing it. So today's topic will be more than just a Passover show, but a Passover show during a war of threatened extinction. Remember, Passover commemorates the Exodus into the promised land. Now we are struggling to keep the promise, keep the land, keep our existence, keep our lives. Once we were slaves, but today more than 100 of our brothers and sisters are slaves to terrible imprisonment in Gaza. I take a moment to pray for the ordinary men and women in the IDF who are working for our freedom, fighting for our freedom. Now, Great Britain is today less represented on our show. Our colleague, Josh London, is flying at the moment, and Jeff in San Francisco will drink his portion. If he doesn't watch out, I'll drink his portion too. So we
half a bottle already down, okay?
So instead we turn to Zalmi in London. Zalmi, tell us what's what, and then tell us what you're drinking. And by the way, give us a blessing in the process for our hostage who are being held as slaves to imprisonment.
I'm going to open up this kosher Pesach Slivovitz. I'm going to have an early go at it. Don't tell my wife because it's not supposed to be in my study. It's supposed to be in some sealed part of the house that's been sold or is going to be sold. But this is what I'm doing. It's Slivovitz, which is a plum brandy. I'm going to drink a l'chaim to all of my good friends here, whether they are on the right or the left, Trump or Biden or whatever. But let's just say, Achenu kol beis Israel, our brothers, the whole house of Israel, Hanasunim Batzor Shivya, who are found in trouble and in slavery and in captivity, who are either on the land or on the sea. May the Almighty have pity on them, and to take them out of trouble, to freedom, from darkness to light, Meshibud Ligula, from servitude to redemption, Ashtar Bagalav Isman Kariv, now and as soon as possible. L'chaim, this is to the IDF and to the well-being of those remaining hostages who have been able to endure this disgusting 6-month ordeal. L'chaim. Okay. You were asking me about what the situation is in Britain. Actually, it's quiet. I mean, if you do not focus on these stupid demonstrations that happen every Saturday, there's nothing really going on here. Everybody's making Pesach. We don't care. Lord Cameron, our foreign minister, has been out to Israel, and obviously none of the G7 wants to have a regional war, and that's completely understandable. But I think everybody accepts that you cannot have a declaration of war, such as what happened on Matzei Shabbat and Sunday morning, without a massive message being sent to Iran. Obviously, we worry about. Personally, I worry more about Hezbollah with 150,000 missiles and the ability to fire 1,000 missiles an hour into Israel, which I think no Iron Dome or no defense system would be able to defend. And I would very much hope that Israel, over the last 15 years, that this arsenal has been built up, has been able to strategize some special weapon, whether it's EMP or something else, which would completely neutralize the entire Hezbollah territory without unnecessarily killing civilians or destroying the unfortunate people of the Lebanon. I mean, this is Iran throwing stones out of somebody else's house, as long as their house doesn't get retaliated against. And I think quite separately, a major punishment to Iran, I would like to see a massive cyber attack, literally bringing them down. And I think that their oil industry should be shut down, bombed or whatever, so that the people of Iran, who we saw being queuing up in hundreds and hundreds for gas literally on Saturday night, because they were worried about gas shortages. If they have gas shortages, they are going to rise up with even greater fervor against this disgusting, vile junta and overthrow them. That's what I hope to see, the quick overthrow of this disgusting regime, anti-Semitic, racist, Nazi regime.
And you know what's interesting about your remarks is Iran is clamping down on pro-Israel graffiti, pro-Israel social media. They've opened up a special tribunal to imprison people doing that. I'd like our listeners to know, as we all know here, that the ordinary people of Iran are really trying to throw off the yoke of the mullahs and the ayatollahs. Many of them support Israel, and we've all seen these graffitis go up. And Iran would not need to tell its people, please don't support Israel, if it was not a fact. Isn't that the case, Zalmi?
Yeah, that is the case. But as a historian, Edwin, you must know that Britain is mainly responsible for the Ayatollah regime, because they overthrew Mossadegh in the 1950s, because Mossadegh was going to nationalize the Iranian oil, and America, the CIA, made a coup against Mossadegh's democratic government, and this is what led to what we have today.
And you're quite unfortunately correct in that. And I did write the book, British Petroleum and the Red Line Agreement. And we think, well, we just got rid of this guy so he wouldn't nationalize the Iranian oil company, previously known as the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, and now known as British Petroleum. The Iranians have never forgiven that, and it's never out of their mind. So you're right. We went in there, as we went into all of these Middle East grounds, and we caused a ruckus, and now we're upset that a ruckus exists. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, and I think the guy who was running the CIA coup operation at the time was a grandson or a nephew of Roosevelt. His name was Roosevelt.
Oh, that's
Kermit. I think Kermit. His name was Kermit Roosevelt, and he led that coup.
all right.
So that's what we're paying for today.
All right. Very.
Zalmi, the Ayatollah and his minions, didn't they not come in till 1979?
Yes. But if they had not overthrown this democratically elected guy, the Shah was very happy to live with this Mossadegh, who was a decent guy. Okay. But listen, you can go back to Sykes-Picot and look at, this is what, enriched all the Arab countries and so forth, and how Britain gave away Transjordan, to the Hashemites. We're dealing with what these shitheads left us.
And I might say that Britain didn't give away Transjordan. They invented it by stealing 2/3 of the Jewish state. And I should also like to say that this is a show for thinking people who think about history. And the modern generation, they don't feel any connection to history whatsoever. I'd like to turn our attention now to our good friend, Jeff Morgan in San Francisco, Berkeley. He's the head of Covenant Wines. And I'd like to know, Jeff, what's up? What's with you? What are you drinking? And are you going to drink your portion and Josh's portion? Take it away.
Thank you, Ed. And thank you all for your support in light of my, questionable views about the Republican Party and perhaps about the Democratic Party. I just wrote a little note to everybody saying that, reminding them that while we may differ, we still are on the same side.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. Phyllis and anybody else? Jeff's a good guy, and we got to keep it kosher on the chat group. Go ahead, Jeff.
So, I've been troubled this year, obviously, like we've all been troubled, but particularly regarding my Passover Seder, the Haggadah, and how it takes us through the story of the Jewish flight from Egypt to freedom in the Holy Land. And I'm not going to read it like I usually do this year. For me, resilience and strength are replacing freedom from my Passover theme. We aren't really fleeing the Egyptians, but we better defend ourselves from all the other MFs, I'm being polite, worldwide who wish us harm. So I don't need to talk about Israel much. Everybody else is going to talk about that, or Hamas or Iran. But let me bring the conflict closer to my home here in Berkeley, California. Yeah. Welcome to Berkeley, where 90-year-old Holocaust survivor and retired physicist Suzanne DeWitt, aka Sunny, who I know personally because she goes to my shul, couldn't even give a 3-minute talk at our city council meeting without being heckled by so-called pro-Palestinian protesters who also harassed council members and Israel supporters, calling them Zionist pigs, genocide enablers, murderers, and you gotta love this, money suckers. Oh yeah, anti-Semitism is alive and well, and the old tried and true tropes still pack a punch, especially when thrown by ignorant, racist, Jew-hating morons. And those really are morons. I'm not a moron, but they are. Welcome to Berkeley, where the Jewish dean of the law school, Erwin Chemerinsky, invites his students to a private dinner at his home celebrating their graduation. And then one of them, Malek Afaneh, the Palestinian leader of the Berkeley Law Students for Justice in Palestine, grabs the mic to try and shame all the guests by saying no one should be eating while Gazans are starving. She and her 9 comrades were ultimately forced to leave. Now, prior to dinner, a poster was circulated on campus and social media with a caricature of Dean Chemerinsky holding a bloody knife and fork with the words, "No dinner with Zionist Chem while Gaza starves." I wonder if these young, misguided, ill-informed, racist, Jew-hating law students know what the word blood libel means and how many innocent Jews have died because of it. May they never get a job as a lawyer anywhere. But since they like to deal in dirt, perhaps cleaning toilets might be a better job for them. Welcome to Berkeley and Oakland, where the Oakland School District officially proclaimed that Israel is a genocidal, apartheid colonial state, and then sent out information of this nature for all the teachers in the Oakland public schools to teach to their students. To their credit, the neighboring Piedmont School District made an open invitation to all Jewish families who felt threatened in Oakland to come to school in Piedmont. Well, all I have to say to that is Yasher Koach to the Piedmont School District. Welcome to the East Bay, and that's Berkeley and Oakland, where the Jewish Democratic Association, okay, these are Dems that I'm not really fond of, the Jewish Democratic Association of the East Bay solicits my winery to be a place to meet for discussion regarding which local pols are favorable to Jewish culture causes, and then determines it's too much of a liability for them to gather in a winery. I mean, maybe they forgot that they live in California, where our freaking governor owns several wineries himself, and that politics and wine go hand in hand. What kind of politically attuned Jews would not be supportive of a Jewish business in our neighborhood, particularly one that makes kosher wine? The answer is simple. Some Jews can be our own worst enemies. They can't see the forest for the trees, and they wouldn't last 10 minutes in any country that cries, "Death to Jews, death to Israel." And I guess, and you guys are going to love this, I guess that includes Dearborn, Michigan. Sorry, Shel. So what's my takeaway regarding the current state of affairs? Well, obviously we Jews don't get a free pass to live peacefully in the Holy Land or the diaspora. We need to remain vigilant and strong. And I don't think anti-Semitism is going anywhere soon. It's not going away anywhere soon. That's my take.
And what are you drinking?
I am drinking one of my Israeli wines, the Covenant Israel Syrah, from the Tzivon vineyard in the Upper Galilee, which was recently bombed by Hezbollah. My vines there were pretty much annihilated. There's a big hole where we used to grow grapes. Those guys are savages, animals, and they don't drink enough. And what can I say? It ain't pretty.
Hey, Jeff, what's going on? How's the Democratic base feeling about the infringement on the traditional Democratic Party by these brown shirts?
Well, I have to tell you, here in the East Bay, it's not so much Democrats versus Republicans. It's basically those bleeding heart liberals that don't, especially Jewish liberals, that don't recognize the threats to our people. And there's a lot of really ugly local politics, and it's mostly Democrats because they're not. I don't know if we have any Republicans here in the East Bay, but we got a lot of really, really anti-Zionist, anti-Jewish Jews who are threatening us and working in conjunction with local so-called progressives that, as you talked about earlier, they don't seem to understand history. They don't seem to have learned anything from history. So it's not the brown shirts that frighten me right now. It's the progressive wing that has aligned with the pro-Palestinian savage Jew-hating wing in their ignorance, and that threatens all of us. And I'm probably gonna get a gun soon because I don't really think that we're very safe here.
I think the most sickest thing of all is that most of these institutions, whether it's Harvard or any of the other ones, almost totally have been funded by Jews with great largesse.
Yeah.
And these have been the breeding grounds for the biggest anti-Semitic wave that America has ever seen. And this is the sickest thing of all. When I go through New York and I go down, any avenue, and I see public buildings, museums, hospitals, every one of them has got a Jewish signature on them. Very few of them have got an Arab signature on them. We have funded all of this stuff, and they have been turned against us. I don't think we should be giving any more money to this. All of any Democratic donor, any left-wing donor, whatever, should be sending their money to Israel and putting it in Israel bonds instead of investing it in this absolute nest of evil.
I want to go on record right now as saying that I've never heard Jeff Morgan speak like this, and it reminds me of the conversations I've had with Nathan Lewin, who no longer believes that the law is going to be a refuge and a relief for Jews in the United States. Thank you very much for sharing, Jeff. I hope to see you soon. And Zalmi, I'm sorry I'm not coming up to London on this trip, but if you're in Israel next month, I'll see you there. Let's take it away to Shel Freilich in Detroit. What's on your mind? What are you drinking? What's going on?
Thank you, Edwin. First, I'm going to go into what I'm drinking because it's a happy side of it, and then I'll go into what my comments are. And Zalmi, I'm glad you're drinking Slivovitz. I save my Slivovitz for Pesach. Now I got to use up all the whiskey, which we can't drink during Pesach because it's fermented grain. And I'm drinking Whistle Pig rye, if you can see that. Whistle Pig 10-year-old rye. Whistle Pig rye was only founded in 2008 and
Wait a
released.
minute, is that kosher?
It is. It is a kosher rye. It's made from 100% rye, even though it's called Whistle Pig. I didn't choose the name for it. It's a very odd name.
The
Believe me.
Whistle Pig is one of our favorites here, and I note that Ken Abramowitz thought that he could outdo me in Whistle Pig vintage recently, and that was once, but he's never going to do it again.
Apparently, Whistle Pig is a term for which I've never heard for a groundhog. But anyways, this whiskey released its first expression only in 2010 and made a big splash in the American market because of the tremendous resurgence in rye whiskey in our country at the time. And what's interesting is Whistle Pig was established with the help of the late great David Pickerel, a former master distiller of Maker's Mark. Pickerel was a whiskey legend who helped hundreds of distilleries around the globe. And what's interesting, in 2008, Pickerel embarked on a whole new project to find the world's best rye whiskey. He spent 18 months traveling around the world, trying and tasting rye whiskey at various distilleries, and he finally declared that the best rye whiskey in the world is made at Canada's Alberta Premium Distillery, and that's where Whistle Pig sources its rye whiskey from, the Canadian Alberta Premium Distillery, highly regarded rye. As I mentioned, this is a 100% unmalted rye, 10 years old, aged in a virgin American white oak, and then finished in bourbon barrels. And it's often rated above 91 points from the various whiskey reviewers. When you smell it, you get these bourbon-like vanilla notes, and then you get some fruit aromas like pineapple or papaya, vanilla butterscotch. And then when you taste it, oh boy, it's you get all the rye spices, pine and peppermint and black peppery rye. This is a bold, spice-forward whiskey. It screams to be sipped. Don't mix it in a cocktail.
Sound like Josh London.
L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim, guys.
Oh wow! You could the spice just explodes in your mouth, but the nose you really get a lot of that vanilla, that bourbon-like vanilla. So my comments. First about Iran. Iran is the source of all the terrorism in the Middle East. It's the head of the snake. It's planned, directed, armed, and financed Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis that are sending missiles to Israel and disrupting international shipping. It's also controlling militias in Iraq and Syria. And Iran needs to be taken down. During the Trump administration, Iran was on its knees because of the financial economic sanctions. It was down to $10 billion in reserves, very low for a country of that size. In the last 3 years, after Biden came into power, the United States has given billions to Iran, lifted the economic sanctions, allowed Iran to sell oil on the international market. So it has hundreds of billions of dollars coming in to advance its economy and to advance all the terrorism. Iran also has agents in the United States and has a network of terrorists in South America. It's only a matter of time before a disaster happens in our country, here in the United States, from these Iranian terrorists. So I hope that, and what's very disappointing is the Biden administration is running around saying they have no proof that Iran is behind all this terrorism. It's more than foolish. It's very, very dangerous. As many of you know, I'm president of ZOA Michigan, Zionist Organization of America's Michigan. And one of the things we're doing is to try and fight the propaganda, we've been putting up billboards on I-275 in Michigan. One says terrorism isn't just Israel's problem. Americans stand with Israel. And a second one, our votes count. Americans stand with Israel. In the chat, I put in a link to the Jewish News Service article about our billboards. And in about a week or 2 weeks, another billboard is going up near the University of Michigan on US 23 and M14. It's going to say, University of Michigan, stop anti-Semitism on campus. So we're trying.
That's amazing. That's amazing for Michigan, especially with what we're hearing about Biden and his concern about, getting voted in by the Muslims.
That's why we're putting up these billboards. We can't say to people how to vote because we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, but we're trying to get the message out.
I would like to interject that the ZOA chapter that Shel heads up is the best ZOA chapter in the country. And I'd like to also mention that the Zionist organization of which Shel's group is derived was specifically authorized and enshrined in international law, as Shel well knows, in the San Remo Convention and the Palestine Mandate, and was then included in the UN Charter in the section that preserved all of those recognitions in the Middle East. Continue, Shel.
Thank you. Thank you for those good words. Just the last word about University of Michigan. At their honors convocation about a week or two ago, when the president got up to speak, the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas demonstrators shouted him down. He couldn't speak. They were violent. And so the president called off the honors convocation, disappointing all the students, all the parents that travel from other states. And he ended the event. What he should have done, and I've heard this from other university presidents that have their heads, that have backbone, he should have paused the event. He should have had those demonstrators removed and penalized and disciplined, and then resumed the event. But instead, he canceled the event and gave in to these violent thugs. Very sad.
All right. Well, I'm so sorry to hear so much concurrence in our group. And I would just like to say, I know that Eliza and Stand With Us and the Lawfare Project and even a little bit of the ADL when they get some spine going have been suing the universities. There's going to come a time very soon when the lawsuits need to be directed not at the university level, but at the individuals who are behind the crimes, who are lighting the fires, and who are trying to intimidate people. All right, everyone has spoken except me and Ken, and I will be next. So I've already made my thoughts clear, and I'd like to focus a little bit on what I'm drinking. We have lots of wonderful questions to go to, which I'll ask you to answer. And what I've done here is because Jeff sent out a mass email saying whiskey a no-no for Passover. And I really liked it. And as Shel has said, you can't drink grains, fermented or otherwise, on Passover. So what you can drink, if you want something a little more than wine, and Jeff makes the best wines, so he has brandy, and it's called Double-Edged Sword. Now, I happen to have 2 bottles of Double-Edged Sword, 2 different vintages, the first one and the second one, right next to me. Carol has taken, she's blind poured them into 2 different glasses, number 1 and number 2. I'm going to taste them right now. I got a little water for freshener, and then we'll get to the whiskey. Now, we're going to start here with number 1. It's got a little mark underneath here. Oh, it's very nice. This is, I don't want to get too Josh Londonish here, but it's smelling like caramel Chocolate, honey, wonderful stuff. This is number one. See, now that is so satisfying that I want to drink more. All right, that's number one. All right, now I take a little water. I don't want to be accused by Jeff. And then I go to vintage number two. It's different. It shouts more. It's less flavorful, more alcoholic, if I could use that term in the way it hits me. And it doesn't please the palate as much as the first one. And by the way, Jeff reminds me that brandy is for the whole year. All right, so I'm going with number one. What was number one? This is number one.
That's it.
That's 5777.
Yeah, the vintages are the Hebrew years, since you're not allowed to put a vintage with the Goyish years on spirits in America.
779. So I know you thought you improved it, but I say that this is fantastic. The 5777, this was your first batch, right?
That was my first vintage. So, you know, it evolves in the bottle and it's just probably softer and richer now. And if anybody, we sold out of that many years ago, but if anybody can find the 5877, that's just really a great year for Jews everywhere when it comes to brandy.
And you know what I'll do? I'll pour a little bit in a thimble and I'll send it to any of our vintage boys.
And although Zalmi had Slivovitz, which is a plum brandy, does not touch this wonderful double-edged sword of Jeff's. The double-edged sword is a phenomenal brandy.
Got to get this brandy, and it took him a long time to perfect. He didn't ask me to say this. Now, I want to get to my whiskey before turning it over to Ken. And
I like Slivovitz too. I drink it. I drink plenty of it.
yeah, but Slivovitz you can burn and it lights up the room if there's no electricity. So I mean,
Well, you know, there's good, bad, and better.
all right. I got here. Let me have a little water to wash it down. Highland Park 18. Now I want to tell you how I got into this. This is a very expensive bottle. This particular bottle, it's a very expensive line. This particular bottle is not that expensive. But I was stuck in a hotel in Dallas, Texas for 10 days because I was on the Glenn Beck show and I couldn't get out in time before an ice storm. So we had to go to either Four Seasons or the Omni. We were stuck there. Glenn was nice enough to pay the tab. And at one point, the guy said, would you like to have some whiskey? I saw this whiskey for $68 a shot. I said, what the heck is that? So I figured, Glenn, can you spring for $168 thing? So I did. Since that time, I've loved it. I'm going to have it right now.
I think that Ken has a bottle of that on his desk.
Oh, really?
I can see it. I spot the Highland Park bottle. Am I right, Ken?
Oh,
Yes.
all right.
I got it.
We will get to Ken in a minute. Just on here. Well, Josh would be proud. It's got notes of chocolate, honey, sweetness. Heather from my old days, and it's really warming and wonderful. I have 18 because I really couldn't afford the 21 or the 25. And I looked at the 25 at Total Wine. They want $1,000 a bottle. This is nothing like that. So,
if I keep drinking this Slivovitz, I won't be able to make Seder.
So I'm going to say, I'm going to turn it over to Ken. Now, Ken, I don't know what you have, and I know that you don't have access to good Highland Park there or anything to match my Highland Park 18. So, and I know you're down on your luck in terms of the stock market. So What are you drinking today if you think you can beat Highland Park 18? Go ahead.
Thanks for that softball question. So I was thinking of drinking 18, but when I went to the store, I talked with the expert there. He said 18 is for peasants, and someone like myself should upgrade to 21 years. He said that's the minimum number of years someone like myself should be drinking. So I have a 21-year-old Highland Park, and it's from, I looked at the internet, and the distillery is 220 years old, and it's made in the Orkney Islands. And I looked on the internet, it's like there's 10 islands just north of Scotland. It's like way up there. And in this particular one, they highlighted that they used 3 different casks, formerly bourbon cask, sherry, and Roya cask. And for flavors, it has tropical fruit, toasted almonds, warm spices, caramelized apple, honey, citrus, and heather peat smoke. And it's very, very tasty. And l'chaim to everybody, and happy Passover to everybody.
You know something that in Yiddish, whiskey, what's the Yiddish word for whiskey, Edwin Black?
Visky.
No, it's called Bromfen. You know Bromfen? Anybody recognize that word? It's called Bromfen in Yiddish.
It's named,
and it's after Bromfman, which was the Bromfen family who were bootlegging whiskey out in Casablanca at the time. And they took over the Glenfiddich distilleries in Scotland and various other distilleries. In fact, the entire Scotch whiskey industry in Scotland would not be what it is today without the Jew Bronfman. Another thing that the Jews have brought to the world. Just wanted to mention that.
and now he's got his own foundation.
Zalmi,
I want to say, since I need to pat myself on the back for something that I didn't do, Sam Brofman was in my class in high school, and Edgar was two years behind me.
All right, so you were with the Brofmans. Go ahead.
So
There should be a statue in Scotland, okay, of Edgar, of the Bromfman founder of the distilleries, because without that, honestly, Scotland's distilleries would not be the same without the Jews. But they're another piece of Jewish legacy.
It's interesting because the California Zinfandels, Jeff knows this story, gave rise to the salvation of the French wine industry, because the Zins able to develop this killer of must, and they transplanted and grafted. So all these fancy schmancy French wines are actually descendant from the California wines. Is that not correct, Jeff?
I'll give you a pass on that. It's partly correct.
So Jeff, let me ask you, Jeff, as the wine expert on this panel, what does Chardonnay stand for?
Haven't we been through this? What else could it be? So
It's Char
Adonai, bien sûr.
Correct. Please tell our audience what that is.
So when the Franks, who were the French Crusaders, some of the original colonialists actually to descend upon Eretz Israel, they were there in 11th and 12th, 13th centuries. And they were, serious wine drinkers, and they noticed that, wow, there's some really good wine, vines growing here in Israel, where everything started, of course, as we all know. And they would bring cuttings of these vines back to France to plant them in their vineyards. And, the French can't pronounce H. They can't say ha. They can only say So they would say, we're bringing these vine cuttings back from the gate of God, which would be Shach, that's the gate, and Ha Adonai, the gate of the God, of our God, Ha Adonai, but they couldn't say that, so they just said Shach Adonai, which became Chardonnay, and that's why Chardonnay is obviously descended from the Hebrew.
Oh my God, I'm
Zalmi,
gonna make so much.
It is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna tell it to so many people. It's ridiculous. Ken, what else are you drinking that's in the whiskey vein?
Well, I have one more to show off. We joined a whiskey club in our local community, and they had a little event, and they had a raffle. We won the raffle. So this is Abralor, and this is what we won. It was just luck, but I guess we were lucky that day. And this is, I checked on the internet. This is from the very top of Scotland, just before the islands where Highland Park is, the Orkney Islands. But this is the very tip top of Scotland. And it's called Cask Anam, which means rare cask in Gaelic. And it's made with Spanish oak sherry casks. And it's sweet and rich, and distinctly rich single malt for adventurous malt lovers. And so here it is. L'chaim and happy Passover to everybody.
All right, L'chaim, let me get a little bit more of this. I know that Ken thinks he got me on the Highland Park, but I'll get him next time. I have questions here, guys. Let's get to it. The watch party in the Villages. That's not far from Ken. Ken's just down the street. Is the Bank of America debanking conservatives? This is going to be important because when the Democrats tried to dispossess the Jews in America, one of the methods they're going to use is debanking. And that's part of the pauperization that they can use. And right now, Bank of America is actually debanking conservatives. It's suddenly showing up and saying you can't have your money in this bank. It does quite a bit of that. And if you'll go to the internet, you'll say, why did Bank of America suddenly close my accounts? No fewer than 19 attorneys general in the state attorneys general have put Bank of America on notice that if they continue this activity, they're up for prosecution. So Bank of America, which is the most criminal bank in the history of the United States, well, probably second most, Wells Fargo is the most, is indeed debanking. And that's one of the many uses that will be turned against Jewish people when they are accused of collusion for genocide or any of those things, should the Democrats be taken over and succeed this November. Do you have anything to say about that, Ken? What do you know about Bank?
I'm going to ask, Edwin, is Bank of America going over individuals or organizations on the conservative side?
I think it's both individuals and organizations. There are many individuals. I've investigated this. I know of individuals who have been with them for 25 years, and suddenly they are debanked, and they just get a letter, and they get 21 or 30 days to pull their money out of the bank. And Bank of America is responding to certain odious requests by the Fed to look up people who have words like Trump and Camping World and Bass Outfitters and things like that in their transactions. And so there's no warrant. The head of the Fed said, well, we're just asking them nicely. So there's a concerted effort to penalize people by denying them banking privileges. Ken, what do you guys say about that? What do you know?
Well, I can mention two things. First, about 10 years ago, I had an account at Citibank. I was the finance manager of a small Israeli not-for-profit organization. And I get a letter from Citibank saying, your account is now closed, or it will send you the money. And we are not obligated by federal law to tell you why we're doing this, but we just did it, basically have a nice day. And so I went into the bank and I said, what kind of letter is this? Why didn't you give me a reason? And so he called up some manager and he says, we don't have to supply you a reason. We just closed the account. So that was Citibank. I wrote a letter back to the president of Citibank. I'm sure it never got to him. That said, how could you close my account? Because maybe you're accusing me of doing, or my Israeli organization doing something. Well, you engage in Sharia compliant financing, whereby you take some of your profits and you send it to the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, how come that's okay? And I'm a legitimate not-for-profit organization, don't deal with anything related to terror in any way. These are social causes that we were financing. Of course, they never got a response from Citibank. So I saw that about 10 years ago.
I'm sure you've heard about Nigel Farage. Nigel. Everybody knows Nigel Farage, right?
One of my heroes. He's the next prime minister.
Yes. Well, he had exactly the same situation as you, Ken. He was cancelled by his bank because of his views. And they said, we don't have to tell you why that. So he challenged them and he literally caused an earthquake. And they had to go and apologize and they had to pay him damages and all kinds of stuff. This cannot be allowed to stand. You need to protest this and you should get a lawyer to protest it.
And this letter that Ken described is the same letter that I personally know individuals received from Bank of America with the same wording. And this is being tolerated by and encouraged by the Biden administration. And you see, I'm the kind of guy that looks at everything multidimensionally. And I say, well, if they could do it to conservatives and they could do it to this group and to that group, they could do it to the Jews, and they will indeed. Watch party in Newton, Massachusetts. All the polls say the majority of Americans, even the vast majority, support Trump on almost every issue. Is this why the White House has orchestrated these criminal trials, and are the prosecutions valid? Let's go to Jeff first for your opinion. Senor Jeff, what do you say?
Wait. I just, I'm writing to everybody what I'm thinking here. I just go down, I just wrote to everybody who's listening and reading. You guys got to stop demonizing like Biden, okay, the Biden administration. Let me tell you, it ain't perfect, but whoa, on the other side, it way is not perfect, okay? And I don't want to get into this because it's so complicated. We can't really address the whole thing right now. So what was the question, Ed?
Well, are these prosecutions, in your view, valid? That's the word that was used here. Or I noticed that the White House, that Biden has been making remarks like the other guy's not out on the campaign trail.
I sent a little quiet text to Edwin during this show, and I said, I figured that Jeff, by November, would not be pulling the lever for the Democratic Party. That's my private bet.
Hold on, Ed.
I'm betting you won't.
Ed, wait. If I had a better option that I believed in, I would vote for somebody else. Okay. I don't want to vote for Trump by not voting at all.
Look, I'm just going to say this. When you and I are in the boxcar, I want you to say, Ed, I did what I thought was best. Okay. Let's move on to the third question for the watch party in Chicago. This is one of the best questions, most appropriate. Phyllis, thank you for not posting. It's amazing how quiet things are without Wes. Wes, how are you out there? I appreciate Wes, you're doing a tremendous job of web design. I want everybody to go to IBMandtheholocaust.com and look at that. Now, I've actually got a note in our chat group from Phyllis who says she misses Wes. Now, something's wrong with that. All right, the watch party in Chicago. How bad will it get here during the Democratic convention? The Palestinians and the fascist Democrats are going to take over through local delegations and paralyze the entire convention and the entire party and the entire platform. Now, I am the only guy around here and the only guy drinking here who has been to the 1968 Democratic Convention. So this is what I think they're going to do. I think they're going to block the highways. They're going to block O'Hare in both directions. They're going to block the convention hall. They're going to block the on-ramps and the off-ramps to McCormick Center. They're going to invade the hotels. They're going to take over the restaurants, and they're going to be inside in front of network TV doing what they're doing now, but they'll be doing it to bring the convention down. Remember, this is a bottoms-up revolution, and it's what the Nazis called Druck von unten, where they take the pressure from below, and the Democrats are planning, the bad Democrats are planning a huge takeover in Chicago. And I just want to say this right now. I got $10 in my pocket. I'm saying by the time we get to November, Jeff will not pull the lever.
We'll see. But
I said that. I said the same thing. I texted it to Edwin 10 minutes ago.
If you look at these crowds of the Palestinians and Gaza ceasefire, whether they're in the cities or the campuses, just eyeballing it, at least half the crowd are Palestinian Arabs. And many of them were brought in by Qatar funded and Saudi Arabian funded to study at the universities. The universities love the out-of-state tuition. It's good money for them. So many of them have come from that side of the world, and it's not bottom up, it's from the East. And unfortunately, much of it's manipulated by the Palestinian Authority and by the Iranians.
Okay,
So
here's a question. Thank you for that, Shel. Marlo in Tampa. Is someone sabotaging the munitions factories? I heard that 2 artillery shell factories experienced mysterious fires just days apart. Well, the story is correct, and anyone can check it out. There's no indication that they're connected, but we shall see. Rami from New Haven, Connecticut. This is to me, I'm guessing. Do you deny that Israel is an apartheid state and committing genocide at this moment? And if so, why? I guess, why do I? All right, so let me do it for you. Put your glass down, Zalmi. Let me take over. Rami, here's the deal. I'm so happy you asked me the question. Self-defense, military action in self-defense is not genocide. When the Bushido generation of Japan said, we will never surrender, and Japanese children were trained from 4 and 5 to support a warlike mentality, when the Hitler Youth were supporting Nazism from the age of 4 and 5 to the point where almost a full generation had passed from 33 to 1944, when Hitler no longer had confidence in his army and had the Waffen-SS, the army of black shirts, take over. It takes 2 to 3 generations to rid yourself of that. There are no innocent civilians in Gaza. The Gaza beaches are filled right now with happy-go-lucky people. They've got tons of fruit available in this fake story about starvation. All the information hearing is wrong. The apartheid state is in the Arab states. The apartheid state is in what Palestine has promised to do, which is not a Jew will be able to exist in Palestine. The genocide is not being conducted by the Jews. The genocide is being conducted by Hamas and Hezbollah in Iran, who say, we want to destroy these people. And under the Genocide Convention, when you shout from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, you are guilty of complicity in genocide. The colonizers are not the Jews, who are the indigenous people of Israel, but in the 7th century, all types of peoples were invaded, subsumed, and forced in the Islamic Revolution to convert or die. And that's how they went from Mecca to the south of Spain and to Asia and across North Africa, and even enslaved people there. So
I just want to bring something from Britain here. That one of our news anchors was on a radio station, dealing with some Palestinian supporter, and who said that what Iran did on Saturday night was just in retribution for the attack on their embassy and in Damascus, and the killing of 7 Iranian generals and high-ups and so on and so forth. And so the guy on LBC, which is London Broadcasting, which is the biggest talk show in England, said to this woman, he said, let me tell you, if you in 1940 could have taken out in Switzerland Hitler, Hess, and Bormann in one strike, would you have done it? And she said, well, yeah, well, yes, if you put it that way. He said, well, okay, well, then that's, we've sorted out this whole question. And that's the truth of the matter.
And I would
I
just,
just want,
to
Ed, hold on.
remind-
I just want to say from the USA here to this question. So, colonialism implies that an external nation is moving to another place to try to colonize it, take it over, and remove the indigenous peoples from that place so that they can benefit from whatever raw materials are there. And of course, here in America, that colonizer was, sorry, Zalmi, but it was really not your ancestors, but the Great Britain came and colonized America, okay? And then when you talk about genocide, as Ed said, it is the goal is to eradicate a cultural group or the indigenous group. Well, the US did a great job of eradicating the Native American population. I live in a neighborhood once populated by the Ohlone Indians. Do you think there are any Ohlones left? Not really. And I wouldn't certainly give my house back to one if he said, gee, my great-great-grandfather used to live here. So I think that in history, shit happens. It's not pretty. And many nations in the world, such as the United States, are the result of colonialist activity and genocidal activity. But I can tell you one place where it's not occurred is in Israel, where we, Jews, are the indigenous people. We belong there. We have tried to share it with the Arabs and the Palestinians, who on at least 3 occasions have rejected our efforts to share. 5, thank you, Shel. And they have lost all right to share anything with us. And yet we still have 20% of our population in Israel are Arabs. They're Israeli Arabs. And as Ed said, the only place in the Middle East today where you have a truly open society for both Arabs and Jews is Israel. We were thrown out of all of the Arab countries in North Africa, Syria, Iran, Iraq. We've been expelled from all of those places where our people lived for thousands of years. So what I say to anybody who questions our right to live in Israel, I say a big F you, because
but Jeff, for the same token, I think you should move to Israel and you should go up to the north where your vineyards are, which Hezbollah has destroyed, but you could rebuild it. But the vineyards that you have in California, you should just rename them Arapaho vineyards.
Yes, I'm thinking about it, Zalmi, but at the moment we haven't gotten there.
I just want to say this. In all our generations, the Jews have run away and have wept, dried their bloodstains, and buried their dead. This is the first generation in 2,000 years that has actually not run away, but run toward the enemy to defend themselves, their families, and their state. They're fighting in tunnels. They're fighting in buildings. They're fighting in ambushes. And they're regular people. They're just secretaries and barbers and plumbers and office managers. And they're a real people's army. And for the first time in many generations, we are now standing up for ourselves and we are fighting back.
And we shall never surrender.
And we shall never surrender. Guys, we're out of time. I swear I could have gone on for 2 more hours. Hold for my closing word of wisdom, just 1 minute away. But first, I thank my very knowledgeable and esteemed guests, the Vintage Boys, Jeff Morgan, Covenant Wines in San Francisco, Zalmi Unsdorfer in London, Shel Freilich, Detroit, and the threat analyst and author Ken Abramowitz in Palm Beach. I also thank my very talented international team, including Christine in Indiana, Virginia in New Jersey, Rebecca in the Philippines, Carol in Maryland, love you, honey, as well as many others in numerous additional cities around the world. My team, each one of them, is comprised of very dedicated people. I and we owe them. I'll see everyone back here in 2 weeks from Warsaw, March of the Living, on the way to Auschwitz. Remember, today's episode was sponsored without any preconditions, requests, or stipulations by the third edition of Ken Abramowitz's unfortunately accurate book, The Multi-Front War. The book is available worldwide, and at this point, it's needed worldwide. You want to be a friend of the Edwin Black Show? Go to theedwinblackshow.com/support. Keep me independent. You want to hear me in person? Watch my website for events. I'm in Queens last week. I'll be in Warsaw, Krakow, and Auschwitz, and Lodz in a couple of weeks. Consult my events page at edwinblack.com. Until then, head over to any Barnes & Noble in the USA or any Amazon, Walmart, Apple Books, Google Books, or Kobo platform in 190 countries across this roiling, toiling, boiling planet, where you can find any of my 200 book editions, such as IBM and the Holocaust. You want an autographed copy? Hit my personal, newly redesigned website, edwinblack.com, and click books. Get access alerts to participate live in future shows at theedwinblackshow.com. You'll see a much enhanced and exquisitely produced version of this show and prior episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channel at The Edwin Black Show, and click that notification button like thousands of others have. You will love them. We put new ones up each week, produced by a bold international crew, and very shortly, we're just going to be running a couple weeks behind. Follow me at Edwin Black Book on X, as well as Facebook. And now, for my closing word of wisdom. You can be dismembered for your weakness, or you can be remembered for your strength. Passover means freedom. Chag Sameach Pesach, and a toast to all people everywhere who yearn to be free and who soon shall yearn to remain free. I'm zooming out from our nation's capital. Bless all of you.